loaded into Oxide to decide who is going to be the North American champion.
All right, and we are actually all loaded in. And in the bottom left-hand side of the map, for Ting, it is Neeb.
That was an unforgettable event where we found out that's how people would chant his name, much to our dismay. In the Northeast, we have the blue Zerg player representing Shopify Rebellion. She is Scarlett.
Alrighty, so pretty standard opening here. Neeb is going to be blocking the hatchery of Scarlett right away, which means Scarlett will have to take her hatchery at the third base. Nothing really out of the ordinary. This is how most PVCs go in the early game, Nate. I am pretty excited for this one. I also think that, you know, when people vote with the hashtag SCA or Neeb, they feel like there's less on the line. I don't know that you can actually redeem anything with channel points on the ESL channel, but people feel like if they have more channel points, it's worth more, right? So I feel like they're a little more hesitant to mess around with their channel points than they are with their prediction, where they might be voting with their heart. And we know Scarlett has a load of fans.
Oh yeah, oh for sure, especially with the level of play that she's been bringing out in this tournament. Mm-hmm. I'm still thinking about that late game composition style that Neeb was playing in the upper bracket match against Scarlett, and I keep harping on it because I'm like, if we see that again, and I'll pass this question to you, Cats. Is there something that you see as like a weakness in that late game really slow kind of crawl setup? Is it like Nidus or multiple, or like how do you even try to approach at least before we get into the action on this game?
I think you just have to be better than Neeb, which is extremely difficult to do, especially in that portion of the game. But I say that because like Neeb stacks up against Scarlett in the late game, it's kind of how Serral stacks up against Neeb. And he's the only person, the only Zerg that, you know, goes into late game with Neeb and will more often than not win. And he kind of uses the same tools as everyone else for the most part. He has brilliant maneuvers. You have to be able to utilize the map, like when it's a split map type scenario, the air fleet of the Protoss is usually going to be on one side of the map, so you need some supply empty to kind of harass the other side of the map, kill those bases, keep the economy advantage, and then, you know, make a spore crawler forest type thing, then corrupt or viper and slowly whittle down your opponent. I think that's the best way to go about it. But again, it's always a dance, right? Like with those Templars, with the vipers, with positioning. So it's easier said than done, and we haven't seen that much of that from Scarlett. I'm sure she can play that style. Will she do it against Neeb? I don't know.
That's definitely an interesting question, whether or not we even see that again, right? I got to imagine it's exhausting for the player too. As we have a Baneling nest finishing with a decent amount of Zerglings in production, Cats, as this Adept is going to get picked off. The Lings are headed over, the Banelings are being made, and Neeb has a Void Ray that's about to complete. Do we feel good about the I mean, okay, wait, there's no pylon in the wall. Yeah. So can Scarlett bust this? How many Banelings do you need to kill a gateway?
A lot. The only glimmer of hope, Neeb, so smart, actually moves the Adept so that the Banelings don't get double value out of themselves. But yeah, Scarlett, the only good thing is that Adept was actually trapped on the outside. So that means that there's less firepower behind the wall. So Scarlett will bust through by the looks of it. Neeb already warped in a sentry. I'm not sure that was the right building to protect, actually, for Neeb, as the Lynx are now going to get on top of the units that were on the left-hand side, trying to re-wall as Neeb, trying to kill the Cybercore Scarlett.
Wow.
Behind us, Neeb already re-walled off. And Nate, I think this is over. Yeah.
Okay.
Scarlett knows it too.
Well, man, you know what? I hadn't even thought about that. But the way that you said that, the Adept moved to the side so that if she tried to kill it with the Banelings, it couldn't also hit those three buildings, right? Because she was trying to move them into that in-between spot. But wow. Okay. Well, Scarlett going aggressive. We talked about this, whether or not she might try to do early attacks to kill Neeb. But I do think that's one of the problems, right? I mean, he's a North American player, which means that if he ever spends time on North American ladder, he's seeing stuff like that probably every single game, just about. But a really good defense from our American Protoss, and I completely lost my train of thought. I'm so focused on watching these two get into one of those crazy slugfest games that it's just like, nope, Baneling bust and perfect defense. Brutal.
Yeah. So I hope that Scarlett is willing to do something like that where she doesn't actually commit to the attack, because one thing that Neeb did in his series against Jon Snow is exactly this happened, where he thought maybe there's a link flood coming, but he doesn't have the full information. So the brilliance of Neeb here is that he identified the attack without really seeing the attack. And he drops the gateway preemptively because he thinks, okay, like there's likely an attack of that nature coming because link speed is as early as it was. And I saw at least 6 or 8 circlings, right? So he thinks, okay, let's make that wall off. But if Scarlett only makes 6 to 8 circlings at a similar timing, and then Neeb walls himself off, then you take a small advantage where, you can trick Neeb. So I hope that Scarlett does something like that, identifying that, she didn't really falter as far as like the information game is concerned. Like Neeb didn't really see what was coming. He just thought you're likely to do this right now.
And wow, great call. Great call by Neeb. He's up 2-0 now in our grand finals. It is a best of 7 as we load into Lightshade. And of course, coming from the upper bracket, this gentleman started with 1 map in his favor already. In the bottom right, representing Ting, he is Neeb.
And in the northwest, it is Scarlett for the Shopify Rebellion. That is the northwest, right? Pretty sure.
Northwest, yes.
Got him.
If there's one thing I'm somewhat okay with, Cats, it's actually directions. I've got pretty good sense of direction.
Oh, I'm terrible at directions, the worst.
It's all about paying attention to where the sun is. Good times. I guess that's not very useful on StarCraft maps, but at least they're squares, so helps a little bit, I suppose.
Indeed. Scarlett with a very interesting drone. She faked going towards the 3rd, and then she's trying to come back.
Yeah, what is this? Okay, she did this against Estrella in one of the games too. The drone went out, and then she didn't actually take the 3rd. But then, when the opportunity presented itself, she just took the natural a little bit later. And I guess that's why she builds the pool at that time, just so she doesn't have to think about it.
Yeah, and it's a risky decision to make as well, right? Because if Neeb doesn't actually move, then you've wasted so much potential time. Then you have an earlier pull than you wanted. And your hatchery will also be later because, the drone is out of position to drop it as soon as you have 300. So it's a cool move by Scarlett because she anticipates or has read her opponent or knows her opponent well enough that she knows that this is the most common procedure that Neeb goes about as far as timings.
Yeah, and timing's definitely one of the things you still have to worry about with Neeb because despite all the conversations about late game, etc., Neeb is one of those guys, as we said, he's good in the early game and mid game, had a really good defense that last game. And I even liked just the way that he pulled the probes at the exact moment that gateway was getting blown up. He had the Oracle out right on time, and just being able to hold those lings in place made it so much easier for the Oracle to finish those off. Doesn't have that wall quite set up. There's the other gate, and little probe is going to slip on by while these lings give up. Not a whole lot to be found there. As small of a moment as that is, a lesser player could make a big mistake and lose a lot there.
Definitely, and it also forced a chrono boost out of Neeb to get that Zealot out a little bit earlier than he normally wants to, and he did have to make a Zealot, so I think it's still even. Even though Scarlett did go for the pool before hatchery and made 4 links that, quote, technically didn't accomplish much on paper, it forced a reaction out of Neeb that makes the game pretty much even at this point, I think.
Yeah, I do like the call out on the chrono boost. That is a good point. If the Protoss can cheat without having to get that Zealot, they usually try. Uncharacteristic, gets 1 drone hit, hits the extractor, then sends the shade. Not sure. Okay, so one drone, and the Adept will be able to get away.
Yeah, picks off 1 drone there, and a little bit. I wouldn't call it a mistake because Neeb attacked the drones that were most readily available to him. But a lot of the time, you want to attack the drones that are in the mineral cracks instead, so that they can't readjust like Scarlett was doing, and then you force basically Sporcle or morphs or kill the drone. Yeah, difficult to call it a mistake because again, you have the option to hit the other drones earlier, so it's a give and take. But yeah, 2 depths are definitely going to take this shade here. Unfortunately for Neeb, the red one is at the front, but already 3 workers have gone down on the side of Scarlett. Hopefully not a fourth one. There you go. Neeb targeting the drone in the cracks of the minerals, so that secures him that drone because it's so difficult to pull that drone away, and it's going to be further away to micro it. So that nets Neeb a total of 4 workers. And yeah, I mean, this is a pretty good start for him. That's 5 workers total, I believe, in the early game that Scarlett has lost. She had to make a few circlings. Neeb did lose 2 adepts, which might make it a little bit troublesome for him to take a third. So Scarlett is kind of scouting with her links here, kind of trying to see if Neeb is going to take that third and potentially deny it. The Oracle is escorting the probe instead and has to turn on its pulsar beams, but that's a tiny win in itself for Scarlett.
Yeah, not too shabby. Void Ray is going to make its way to the main. Does shut down the creep tumor. That would give base coverage towards the edge. And 4 queens are going to shove that Void Ray right back on out as it runs out of shields. Might try to see if it can nab a tumor or something, but I mean, it's taking real damage now. You can't fix those, so you got to be a little bit careful. Roach Warren is on the way, still building queens. What are you feeling as far as Scarlett's mid-game strategy here? Do you think that she's gonna maybe do like one of those roach pushes again with the queens, or Ravager Ling? Is there any good options on this map, you think, Cats?
Yeah, I think this is one of the best maps for those roach queen or Ravager queen or whatever you want to call it pushes. The queen walks. It is a relatively short map, and there is a lot of space between the natural and the third base, which makes it so that Scarlett will be able to choose between those bases should she go from the middle of the map, which she probably will. Already got good creep spread to make this happen, one of the trademarks of Scarlett. So it's going to be a difficult defense for Neeb. It's all about those corrosive piles. Scarlett has taken a little bit of damage here and there in the early game. Neeb will spot this with the Void Ray on the high ground. And actually, this is kind of a checkmating move because Scarlett is going to lose more economy, going to have to retreat with some of those roaches. She does have some time because the queens are still walking and are pretty slow. And luckily for Scarlett, she had some links left over that can kind of come back and not really waste as much time. So, yeah.
Here they go.
Here. Yeah, here we go.
They're off to the races. I actually like... Look at the spread, by the way, on the batteries and the cannons. Trying not to put all of them super close to each other. For in the case of like the Ravager Bile, and giving a little bit of taking space control. But here come the queens. The Immortal is out here as well. There are the force fields from the sentries. At the very least, going to take some of the potential biles that could be used offensively away, as it'll be needed to smash open those force fields on the ramp. Oracles are coming back too. The queens are all still alive in the front though. One Oracle goes down. Void Ray trying its best to hold on. A second Immortal is here, but there's Lings coming in on top of this. The cannon gets punched. And there's just so much Zerg here. Cats, does Neeb have what he needs to get the defense? Overcharge on the shield battery is going to come in, but the Ravagers and Queens are all still mostly at full health.
Yeah, and there was 26 links in production during all of this, Nate, that are going to start showing up. Stalkers and Immortals are not going to be good against those. Scarlett has to be careful not to lose any Ravagers while waiting on those links to buffer. She has lost 1. She's mostly out of transfused energy. The Immortals are still outputting a lot of damage, but there's no roaches out here, only Ravagers and links, so they won't be doing extra damage, and it looks like Scarlett might be breaking through. She's being very careful as well of keeping her Ravagers near the Queens. One of the Immortals will get picked off. And now this is looking pretty decent for Scarlett. Has to be careful. If those, look at those 2 red Ravagers. If they fall, that's going to be a very difficult defense for Neeb, who's going to just retreat into his natural base, give up his third and his defense, which was really cute. I mean, I was ready to say this was one of the better defensive setups that I have seen for the map, anticipating the trajectory of the units of Scarlett there and just defending kind of that middle neutral area. But yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that he's going to be able to defend here. Scarlett is now droning up, important to note.
Yeah, and this is the hard part, because even though you're still trying to make this defense happen, that wall has some crucial infrastructure built into it. The warp gates for the production, the cybernetics core. It's just zealots now that Neeb can build. He's getting charged. He's getting a dark shrine. I think the warp prism will help a little bit micro-wise. The queens are not super mobile. They can still zone it away a little bit, but Scarlett took a 4th base during this, Cats, and she's got +1 roach speed on the way. She's droning up again, so I'm still... Does Neeb just go for some sort of crazy counter all-in? What does he do? Can you just retake the 3rd?
Well, Neeb made a few lovely moves in that he didn't really overcommit to the defense here. He thought, okay, you're not going to attack into my choke. I saved enough of my units. And he didn't even commit into shield batteries. A lesser Protoss would have made a lot of shield batteries there, and he would be at a deficit because Scarlett was actually droning up behind this, right? So Neeb now, like you were saying, Nate, has some counterattack potential because all of his investment was into army behind this. So these DTs are going to show up. Scarlett already has an Overseer that will spot them, so this is a good win for her. I don't think there's any escaping them, and Neeb thinks that he's not going to be able to break through. Will GG out, and Scarlett with a point on the board.
Well played, well played. Scarlett getting it done with that queen walk push, and Neeb unfortunately unable to get the units that he needs for that defense, but still up 2-1. So not all is lost there. We're going to be moving into game number 4 in just a few minutes' time, ladies and gentlemen. We'll take a short break, and when we return, the rest of the grand finals between Scarlett and Neeb. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the DreamHack Masters North American Grand Finals. I'm Nathanius, joined by Katz, and we are currently loading into Romanticide to continue our PVZ Best of 7. And been a little bit some aggro on either side here so far in this series, Katz.
Yeah, and that's definitely, I think, what we wanted to see from Scarlett. That was a beautifully executed all-in last game. I mean, it's a very common build, especially on that map. But there's a lot of nuance to the unit choices and the decisions that the players make. I really like the idea for Neeb's defense, for instance, in where he positioned the third for starters, not in the triangle, but vertically. So That and the defense was pretty cool as far as like the setup, but Scarlett made some brilliant decisions herself. It's all about, counting the units, seeing if they're Stalker Immortal, then Links gain value. I would have maybe even liked to see her mine off less gas and maybe go for Muta or something like that later if she was going to mine the gas all along. But it was beautiful. We're in the next game now, Nate. So let's start talking about this one.
Hell
in the
yeah.
top left-hand side for Team Tig, it is Neeb.
And his opponent in the Southeast, the blue Zerg player representing Shopify Rebellion, she is Scarlett.
Even the availability of the larva that last game, for example, to make that link flood happen is impressive in its own right, because you can't be missing injects and have that availability, right? So if Neeb was warping, for example, Zealots, I'm sure we would have seen a few more roaches. Scarlett just made a handful of Ravagers. She kept them throughout the entire engagement, reinforced with Links, which are the best unit to reinforce, especially against Immortal Stalker, like I was saying. So it was beautifully executed, I think, on either side, but a very difficult task for any Protoss to stop something as well executed as Scarlett pulled off on that map. This is a different story on this map, though.
Yeah, well, if there's one map that we know for games that go long in this map pool, it has to, Romanticide's name gets thrown in there pretty quickly, right? You have that ramp, a big wide double ramp that leads into that natural/third area. But if you cut that off defensively, there's not really a whole lot of other attack paths to get hit by. You can go around the back on that third, but it takes a lot longer to get there, a lot more opportunities to get spotted. And most players try to put something over there at some point or another, just to make sure that that's not what the case is going to be, as we wait to see where Neeb is going to take his tech tree and his decisions this game, and whether or not we're going to have another big aggressive build out of Scarlett. There is the Stargate.
Yeah.
And is there any particular strategy you like from Scarlett on this map? Do you think that this plays into maybe something else that she likes to do as far as timings go, or trying to prevent a big late game situation?
So difficult to make timings happen on this map. Nate, I've been trying to think about something, but it's very difficult because of what you were mentioning, right? Like, for example, this Adept is going to shade and poke from the third area, which is pretty cool. Scarlett already has an Overlord there, though. That means her units will be in position. If the Adept wants to take a different angle and, access the area of Scarlett through the other angle, through the shared ramp, then he would have to go all the way around, like you were mentioning. So it's a difficult task for anyone to be aggressive on this map, really, as long as your opponent has good vision and knows where you're coming from. If they deflect one path, then it buys you so much more time to just get set up on the other side. So one thing that I was thinking of, but I don't think we're gonna see it maybe ever, is you could potentially mine the mineable little mineral patches that give access to the third, and even the ones that give access to those ones right there on camera, and even the ones that give access to the purple gas base. It would be a huge investment as far as like pulling enough drones to make that happen, but then you would shorten the path and come in at a very unexpected angle with something like a queen push. So I think something like that would be awesome, but it's it's pretty crazy, and we're unlikely to see it.
Well, you know what we are likely to see, and here it is. This is the second Stargate, cats. So I guess we might just be going down the rabbit hole on this one, since, as you said, this, and I feel like we've been talking about this. It's an important thing to mention. This map is a really good defensive map. If you want to play greedy, if you want to play tech heavy and not have as big of an army as, say, on like Beckett Industries, for example, this is the map to do it. So Oracle's going to come in, get a couple of extra drone pickoffs, and that third base gets scouted by a Ling. But is there much that can be done about it? We will find out shortly. Another 2 Void Rays in production as that second Stargate completes. I think once he's got 3 Void Rays, just sending Lings to that third, couple of Lings here and there, is probably not going to be enough to slow it down or deny it at all.
Yeah, not at all. Scarlett knows that, so she's just droning up. That was a couple of beautiful moves from her end in identifying that the Adepts, well, more or less the timing to get out the Links to deal with the first 2 Adepts was good. The first 2 Adepts don't find the damage that they're looking for, but what they did do for Neeb is identify where the Spore Crawler is located, and knowing where the Spore Crawler was, because the Spore Crawler has to be either one hex to the right or to the left. It's never dead center of the hatchery. That usually leaves a small opening on the other side, and Neeb, identifying where that opening was, goes in with the Oracle and picks off an extra couple of drones. That was really cute.
Yeah, and we get to see the Void Rays coming over, using those beams as the big, beautiful laser beams, shooting down that fourth hatch. Going to force a little bit more of a defensive commitment to defend this out of Scarlett as she starts up her infestation pit, and the Oracle comes in for a few more drones with a revelation on the way out. And Neeb is going to get in a robotics facility as well as charge and +1 attack, so it's not like he's going to pretend ground units don't exist. But hey, he's not building much else out of the Stargates yet either. So I'm quite curious to see what final composition he wants to end with. We know he can go air, but maybe he's going to try to do some Prism Zealot harass while he takes a fourth or something of that sort.
This is very interesting indeed, because you don't usually make 2 Stargates and just not do anything with them. I think that something had to tell Neeb that it was okay not to utilize the Stargates at this point in time. Maybe he was preparing for a potential Queen push. Maybe he just wanted the Stargates to make sure that Scarlett's fourth was delayed. And upon accomplishing that, he feels like that's good enough to just push on the gas pedal and add a bunch of gateways and go for a mass charge load all in. And Scarlett is probably dead, to be honest, Nate. I mean, she has added 4 infestors. She's still droning. Those infestors are going to have no effect in the near future. The Hive is on the way, Evo Chamber on the way, upgrades on the way. None of those are fighting units, and Neeb is going to show up with a huge Zealot force in a very short period of time. I have no idea how Scarlett could hold. Aspire, my God.
Yeah, she really is just kind of going straight into that mega late game setup, huh? Perhaps Neeb's strategy was kind of centered around forcing her into that thought process. As another Robo Bay, that +1's finishing up, Archons are coming in, but the Overseer coming in, this scout. If Scarlett is able to get the right information, she should see that this is not some big late game commitment. And Neeb starts up his +1 air weapons, so he is still thinking about it. He just hasn't, taken that big step towards it. And I'm not even sure if the reason why he started that upgrade is just so Scarlett sees it and thinks that he is going straight to mass air.
I'm very confused by Neeb's approach here. I thought he gathered enough information. I think if he had just worked in a lot of units, he would have been able to kill Scarlett. He hasn't been doing enough of that, but this force in itself might still be scary enough. So let's see if it is. And yeah, to your point, Nate, I thought, okay, maybe Neeb thinks if Scarlett scouts my 2 Stargates, then I can go for an all-in on the ground, and that would have been brilliant. And that's why I checked right away. Scarlett never scouted the Stargates up until now. So she couldn't have reacted in the way that she reacted I'm very confused about Neeb's approach here. He had a timing that I'm pretty sure would have just outright killed Scarlett. Maybe he didn't gather as much information as I thought. Maybe he thought Scarlett's going to be hyper aggressive for some reason. But Scarlett actually gets away with murder because, like I was saying, she was setting up for a late game, kind of skipping through the early and mid game, being extremely greedy. Look at the amount of tech that she has gathered. Those infestors are now actually going to be useful. Now she has a competitive army, but it is off of a 95 worker economy. I am loving this game for Scarlett now. Neeb missed her timing.
Her army is getting really, really big. And exactly as you were saying earlier, she has all of the tech now. She's got all the tech. She's got the Spire, the Greater Spire, like you said. Infestors are already on the map, but she's going to get pathogen glands now for any future ones that she needs. This Overseer that was tucked in is going to come out and do a bit of scouting. I don't know if it has enough energy for Contaminate or anything, but she's getting the information that she needs. And this is a scary army to walk into. Regardless of what unit composition you have, if you get fungled and they bile you, whatever is got in that fungal is going to die. So you need to make sure 100% sure you're spreading your army out when possible. Or if you're able to get a feedback on the infestors or do anything to the infestors, you want to seize that opportunity because Ravager fungal bile is just absolutely a dynamite combination that's I get scared when I think about Void Rays on top of Disruptors, and I'm like, that would be a real juicy bile, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the Disruptors and the Archons are really the only chunkier unit. I guess the Immortals as well, but there's not many of any of those, right? The main composition is Zealots and Void Rays, and all of those clump up into tiny spaces where one fungal can catch, 30 plus units, and that's just insane value because then you're doing the fungal damage times 30 and slowing down 30 units, right? So it's pretty nifty. The only unit that gives me hope for Neeb here is that Disruptor. If it can get a hold of some of those infestors, that'll be wonderful. Hits the queens, but they have plenty of transfused energy, so that's not gonna matter too much. Scarlett already well set up with spines everywhere, and Neeb is, you know, getting a taste of his own medicine. It's Scarlett who's looking to play the late game from a risky setup throughout the early and mid game, and she has gotten away with it. If she's ever gonna win a late game against Neeb, I think it could be this game.
Big Fungal comes in, trying to chain it a little bit. Disruptor shot on the back is not able to connect, but the Ravager is not in position to try and capitalize on that either. Neeb does find a soft spot finally. Baneling is going to take the shields off the Zealots, and 7+ drones going to get picked off as the Disruptors continue to try posturing for this position on the outside of that southwest base, but no opportunity there. If there's one thing that we can say for Neeb, at the very least, he's been trying to find a hole. He hasn't really gotten it, but Scarlett hasn't really been counterattacking him either. He's gotten his expansions up pretty straightforwardly, and we should expect to see that big Protoss army out of the Stargates, I assume, in the future, if he's not able to get a couple of really good connections. Does hit one of the infestors there, though, Cats.
Yeah, Neeb has been aiming for those infestors every time because the queens are just going to regenerate unless you get double shots stacked up on them. And with this, Neeb looking to carve a way to try and kill this base. This is the first successful attack from the American Protoss, and this is looking pretty decent at this stage. Scarlett has a counterattack going towards Neeb's fourth, so if she can equalize there, that'll be fantastic. Actually gets a bunch of probes, Neeb not microing them, in spite of him being completely aware of what's going on. We can tell by the war pins, but he is focused on this front. He actually could have hit the infestor if he readjusted there. Instead goes after the queens, which is fine as well because there's no more energy on them. The infestors are going to end up dying. Broodlords, however, are near invincible against this army, but there's not very many of them. And the Archons are getting on top of them. There's no more transfuse available. Those roaches don't want to have anything to do with those immortals.
Yeah, you absolutely can't let the Archons get under the Broodlords, but at the same time, Neeb does not want to throw this away. These 5 Immortals and the 5 Archons, it's a very expensive backbone, really, because I don't think he needs to necessarily even think about rebuilding too much of that if he keeps that alive, and that should allow him to dump the rest of his money into those Stargates, and it's Void Rays all the way down as it looks from this perspective. Flux Veins begins researching for Void Ray speed, has 3 Stargates, and what was it? I think in that game on Blackburn, he ended up with something like 11 Stargates by the end of it. Because you never know. You never know when you're going to need to rebuild 11 carriers because you've mined out the whole map, Cats.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Upper hand right now, in my book, still for Scarlett, because compositionally, she has the Broodlords. The problem for her is going to be those Void Rays, but it's all that Neeb has been able to make up until this point. Now starting some Tempests, that's going to add complexity to his Earth fleet, and he's actually going to be able to deal with these Broodlords a little bit better. Scarlett did a good job of remaking Infestors. She's adding Vipers now, which are, kind of like the infestor of the air for those Void Rays. They are gonna do a lot of damage to clumped up units with the parasitic bomb. So I like her composition, but Neeb already transitioning into the Tempests could cause troubles come down the line. At the moment, Scarlett should be able to deflect any attacks.
Yeah, and one other thing that I really liked about Scarlett's play, and she did this against Estrella, she's been doing a really good job of focusing on the upgrades. She's not going to get caught off guard by carriers or anything like that. And, Neeb didn't actually build carriers in that crazy long game. He relied a lot on the Tempest and the Void Rays, so maybe that doesn't even come into question. But part of why Estrella couldn't win that first map he had against her was because he only had +2 versus +3 Carapace. So the Hydras were just a little bit too durable for him to get through. As Neeb gets a big Zealot counterattack, he's going to shove them straight into that natural. He's looking for the hatch.
He's going to get it too. Oh, 2 queens with transfuse arrive a little bit too late. And an extremely successful 10 or so Zealots from Neeb, who kind of poked in the north of the map and then was kind of just sitting with the Zealots to the side, waiting for Scarlett to react. Goes in and snipes 2 bases with 10 Zealots. That's insane value.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely nice to pick that up. 4 Stargates being added as +3 air gets close to completing. Shadow Stride for the Dark Templar to be able to jump those distances. And even Protoss Shields, which are just good on literally everything. They literally affect every Protoss unit, Cats.
They really are. On the side of Scarlett, however, she has not slowed down as far as upgrades are concerned. Look at her upgrade tab right now. She's going to get 333 for her ground. Now, I'm not exactly sure that that's the best move, just simply because she has like basically no ground aside from some links and banelings, and I suppose broodlings. But most of her army is kind of spellcasters. It's gonna be the broodlords, it's gonna be the corruptors, and she does have decent upgrades on the air, but not as significant as her 3/3/3. I'm not sure if, like, I think I wouldn't even mind it if she dropped a Hydra then, just to have the capacity to remax on Hydras, because they would be so well upgraded.
Yeah, why not? Why not open up that tech path anyway if she gets enough money for it with the lurkers, as this map is being split apart at this point. A huge field of static defense for Scarlett covering her army while she accumulates all of the infrastructure and technology that she desires. There is the anabolic synthesis for the Ultralisks coming in. That's the off-speed creep upgrade. So we may even be seeing some of those space cows come chonking their way in if Neeb is in a situation where he's trying to remax or rebuild that air fleet, if Scarlett's able to break it down. But he's just focusing on those upgrades too. DT Blink's about to finish. Maybe this opens up a new harass opportunity. I'm not entirely sure what the game plan here is, because both of them are playing really cautiously, but not everything is here with this force. Wow, I can't believe the infestors got that close with just Lings to help them and got away.
Yeah, it was terrified for them. Those are very few infestors that Scarlett has. And one thing that I've noticed as far as differences between approach of Serral versus Scarlett in this particular matchup, Serral is comfortable sitting down or sitting back like Scarlett is, but with a much better economy. Scarlett at some point was at 95 workers, but she hasn't been able to, keep that up. Ooh, I don't know. I think that was a misclick. She wanted a Tempest, got an Archon. But if you don't have that economy, then you're not accumulating the bank that you want. Neeb is keeping up now in bank. So the remax potential for both players is going to be very similar. So you have a Spore Forest. You want your opponent to attack into you, but you also don't have an insane economy, right? So I think she maybe committed a little bit too heavily to those Ling Bane, and she is doing a good job of denying this forward base. So that can be part of the strategy for sure. But I am growing a little bit more concerned for Scarlett, who is getting 3/3 on air as well. She has all the upgrades. Also, not sure how the Ultras are going to come into play, Nate. It will have to be a very bizarre situation for those to come in, because Broodlord's already... Neeb is doing
the slow crawl.
Yeah, those Ultras and Broodlords, Nate, they kind of overlap in their role to take down the ground army and the Templars primarily, so...
Yeah, it is a pretty strong focus on anti-ground, considering that you would think that a large portion of this army's firepower is in the air, but those storms are still going to be useful for supporting the Tempest and Void Rays against the Corruptors. And let's not forget feedback if that option presents itself. One lone Templar stepping up forward, I think, looking exactly for those feedbacks, and not finding that opportunity just yet as the Tempest chip away. He does have tectonic destabilizers. As you can see, the attacks turn orange. That's how you know they blow up buildings even faster than they otherwise would. Good revelation, though, as he's able to pick off another one of those Broodlords. And all the infestors kind of exposing themselves too, Cats.
Yeah, this is very concerning. I mean, Neeb is playing this beautifully. He made 3 oracles, so he's always going to have that revelation. As long as the units of Scarlett are revealed, then the High Templars can actually outrange the Vipers. Their spells are not so much a dance in that sense, because if the Templar can see the Viper, you can always get the feedback off before the abduct comes off. So for Scarlett, she has to add the Broodlords in the front, but Neeb not paying attention is going to lose 3 of those Tempests. So an unexpected move out from Scarlett out in the open, and that's going to net her a pretty decent advantage to start this fight. Let's see if she can continue to capitalize.
She's going to try and keep pushing forward. Mothership is about to complete probes. Are tasing Spore Crawlers. That was a great shot. And +2 air armor is coming in, but yeah, it's just the 2 Tempests. So the anti-Broodlord force, a lot weaker, considering that the Void Rays will now also be under the threat. I mean, if they're just Corruptors versus Void Rays is one thing, but when you add Parasitic Bomb and Fungal on top of that, those Void Rays are not going to be quite as durable as you might otherwise hope.
Yeah, this is a beautiful counter poke from Neeb. It's a very small force, but a very difficult force to answer, because Archons just stack up so well against Zerglings, and that's all Scarlett has as far as a mobile army on the ground. She's refusing to make roaches, which I can completely understand, but it would be helpful against the army of Neeb that he's effectively just throwing out at this point in time. So Scarlett will net herself a base after sniping those Tempests that we were talking about. And that's a nice win for her, given that Neeb only has 2.5-ish mining bases. But the counter retaliation from Neeb with this tiny little force was just brilliant. That's when you wish as a Zerga.
And it doesn't seem to be over just yet. It's going to storm over his own army to make sure these Lings can't just rush in and get us around. And yeah, wow, how about that? Gets through all the Lings. Like you were saying, Archons, they go beast mode on those Zerglings. And the Immortals and Archons are ready to truck through everything else. The Spine Crawlers are not going to be too much of a threat to these Immortals.
Yeah, I almost wish the focus fire of those spines was on the weaker Archon rather than the Immortals, because Scarlett's still producing just Lings to answer this army. Oh, no vision here for a second. The Broodlords are going to walk a little bit too far forward. Now the Void Rays are overcharging. The Mothership will get abducted, only for Scarlett to find out just how much is under their cloak. Now Neeb is having to retreat, as the Parasitic Bomb was beautiful on those Void Rays. And the fumble actually to stop the retreat, Nate. This is looking okay for Scarlett, but the feedbacks are on those Infestors.
It's just these handful of Void Rays and Tempest holding on to this northwest base. We have 6 Void Rays in production at once with a Tempest. 10 Zealots get warped in on the bottom to prevent the Lings from getting through too much of this. And a lot of those Void Rays actually shooting at the Overseers, Cat. So getting a bit caught by the AI on the rally over to the back to that base, as a bunch more Corruptors are going to be made. Scarlett knocked under 100 supply, but well, you've got 6,000. Surely she has the larva to rebuild, right? She only has 13 larvae right now, Cats. Can she get all that supply back? Let's find out.
Yeah, she's gonna go for Broodlords, which are not gonna cost the extra larva at least, so that's good for her. She's remaking Infestors, which
she only has 2 queens.
She needs a little bit more time.
She only has 2 queens. Cats, the larva is such a... I'm like, oh, Zerg's supposed to remax after this fight, but she can't.
And she's making Zerglings. You know, this is where the Hydras would have come in handy. Roaches even would have been a better option to remax. You do have 3/3/3 on the ground. But I mean, 3 Immortals, the 2 Archons, and 3 High Templars basically win that game for Neeb, Nate.
I don't know what to say there. It's normal that the Queens come out and assist with the defense and try to do some of the work, but I didn't realize that pretty much all of the Queens had died during that big fight, and she had made so many Zerglings, there just wasn't any larva. So even though she had all that money, wasn't able to spend it in a quick enough fashion to remax, and Neeb capitalizes on that opening. He takes it for that dub. Very well done on his part, and now goes up 3 wins now on this series so far.
Yeah, expertly done by Neeb. I mean, you can't play you can't play too short of perfect and expect to win against Neeb. Scarlett found an opening when Neeb wasn't paying attention, right? And she picks off 3 Tempests, transitions that into a base, but Neeb trades with that little army that we were talking about on the other side of the map. And then Scarlett commits onto a base that has shield batteries and a shield battery overcharge. And the way that she was attacking against the army of Neeb, I think would have been completely fine if it was a fight out in the open, because the Void Rays were all pretty low. So you don't want to focus fire 1 Void Ray and lose out on a bunch of extra damage from the overkill on the Corruptors. But given that there was a battery overcharge towards the tail end and other batteries with energy, those Void Rays at very low health kind of continued to live through, and all the Corruptor numbers were just dwindling. So I think a little bit more focus fire would have come in handy there. A difficult decision to make, but it cost Scarlett the engagement, and then the little counterattack from Neeb, it was just too much.
Yeah, it was super well done on Neeb's part. I hadn't even thought about the way that killing those hatcheries would also affect, right? That 3rd and 4th base that he picked off. That was a big part of that larva production, but that was then, and this is now, as we move forward to our 5th game of this series. In the bottom left, we have the blue Zerg player representing Shopify Rebellion. She is Scarlett.
And in the top right-hand side of the map for Ting, it is Neeb. And not to harp on this too much, Nate, but if we look at the investment into the Ultras, that is Ultraless Cavern, that is some upgrades that obviously are good for the Lings as well, so maybe don't count that as much. But the Ultraless upgrades themselves, I think that if you have a Hydra then instead with the Hydra tech ready to go, then you can much more easily deal with an army that's predominantly Immortal Archon, for example. You were never going to make Ultras to deal with that army. And again, they overlapped in their role with the Broodlord. So I don't mind Ultras or Broodlords, but both very difficult to pull off. And it is an investment that ended up costing Scarlett quite a bit. So Yeah, I think there are little things that maybe she could have done a little bit better. Still a very good early game from her, and she has to be feeling pretty bad about that, because in spite of getting away with murder in the early game and taking up in all directions, she still falters come the late game to Neeb.
Yeah, Neeb he's just such a monster in that late game, and he knows how to utilize all of the tools that are available to him and does it very well. That's just I don't even have words for that. I do wonder what happens in a situation where, you know, the larva isn't a problem and she's able to at least get something out, if there's some sort of thing that she can try to do to buy time. But I guess it's just still a bit futile, right? Because those 2 bases were lost, but Neeb was able to replace his, and he never actually lost that high ground base that was by that that more exposed third open area one. So probe comes in, it's going to tase the drone a little bit, and I don't know, just bring in a little bit of a cheeky harass, I suppose, at the start. These lings will come out though, and the probe will have to attempt to scurry away.
Yes, indeed. This is another map that is very strong for the Queen Ravager push. So we'll see. That worked out once for Scarlett. It might be her way back into the series here if she can pull that off again. I don't think there's a clear-cut response from Protoss that just outright stops that and, you know, has you feeling pretty good about it. It's a very strong attack from Zerg. This is the other map where it's kind of, you know, like you can do it. You can do it pretty much every time, and you have a pretty strong chance of winning.
For sure. For sure. The Stargate is on the way for Neeb. Is there anything that you like on this map as far as the ZVP goes then? Since it seems that Scarlett may need to rely on going for another early attack, because I don't know. You watch that and you're just like, I don't even know what it is you're supposed to do when the Protoss is able to control that army, especially, and just outside of the air memes, because I know that that's getting brought up and people are talking about that, but when a guy can control the, what was it, the two or three Immortals, 3 Archons, and 2 Templar, and you can't deal with that with like 70 Lings or something that she threw at it, is just while he's controlling that big air army is just, I don't know. That's a whole lot to try and fight at once. And yeah, I do get the feeling that Scarlett's going to probably need to do something aggressive before we reach that late game phase if she wants to have a chance in this series.
Yeah, it's the control, but even more than that, it's just the decision making of Neeb and how nimble his decision making is, how quick, how seamless it is for him to just, you know, grab the perfect amount of units that you're gonna struggle clearing and send them on a hatch killing mission basically on their own. And yeah, it's I mean, just very good presence of mind from him, identifying kind of the openings that he has, the units that Scarlett is willing to make, the units that she has already available, the setup that she has, and then being like, okay, this should do it. You know, like this 7 units should do it. Scary, man.
Terrifying, cats. As Oracle comes back over towards the natural, not much to see. There is a Roach Warren under construction, but other than that, the Queens are poised to protect the drones, and that lair will boot up too. But here it is. Here's a little bit of a Neeb special for you, Paolo. We've got Resonating Glaives on the way for Neeb. So he may be looking for, and I don't know if you saw the Astrea Scarlet game on Beckett, but maybe looking for some big Adept plays against our Zerg player here, as the Stasis Trap grabs 3 drones. And, oh, the Adepts managed to slip into the 3rd. Nice, not bad.
Yeah, this is interesting to me. Again, I'm not completely sure what a Protoss should do. Anticipating the Roach Queen push, because it is so prevalent on this map and it is so strong on this map that I think that as a Protoss player, you have to be thinking about that. I don't know how Resonating Glaives Adept is the counter to that. It will hit a little bit earlier potentially, but not even. I mean, Scarlett's already producing Roaches. Roaches are the hard counter to Adepts, more or less. She's going to have the capacity to produce Lings. They already have speed as well. So, I mean, defensively, Adepts are not going to stack up well against Roaches. I'm not sure. Maybe Neeb seems to be thinking maybe counterattack and delay the attack of Scarlett with this Resonating Glaive Adepts. That could maybe work, but difficult to imagine, as there's already a bunch of Roaches and Lings, and this is looking pretty good for Scarlett to start. They will have to stall. They will have to wait a little bit before crossing the map, though, thanks to those Adepts. So maybe that's it.
Yeah, I think the goal is to try and just jump the Queens before the rest of the army is able to join up with them. Of course, we know that there is some energy for Transfuse, not a tremendous amount, but with the number of queens, you know, that energy feels like it comes in a little bit faster. So those adepts get caught.
Oh, wow.
These adepts get caught on the southwest side. Oh, and now is that too many adepts to lose before this attack hits, Cats?
I want to think so, but I mean, a lot of queens did falter there, so maybe that's what Neeb is relying on. Again, a similar setup to the game on Lightshade, where he's actually going to have his defense in a neutral position between the natural and the third. It's a little bit awkward if anyone took the other path, but I don't see any other path that's as good as this one, so it makes a lot of sense to me. Now Scarlett reinforcing again with mostly just Zerglings. She has done a very good job of keeping her injects going throughout this entire series. Maybe not so much towards the tail end of that last game, but I mean, in this early game, it's looking fantastic, and this is kind of the problem for the Protoss player. Now your defenses are spread, and the Zerg player can choose which area to engage on, and Scarlett is choosing beautifully. Actually, she's kind of splitting her own army. I'm not sure that I like that so much. A lot of the queens are going to falter.
Queen's got baited a little bit there, and the interesting thing is she is reinforcing with a lot of Zerglings, but we should keep in mind that Neeb still has the option to make a couple of adepts if he wants to help clean those off. He's still leaning mostly heavily into the Stalkers, as I believe that was the overcharged battery in that third that gets killed, but the rest of the units are coming out of the natural. 2 Immortals, 3 Stalkers, trying to help protect this base, but the units at the third, I don't think there's any way to evacuate those guys. That battery completes. A few more Stalkers get added. The majority of the queens have been cleaned up, and it's just Ravagers and Zerglings. But that third for Neeb has not been killed yet. If he's able to defend against this and keep that Nexus alive, we've got to have a good feeling of a chance here, right, Cats?
Yeah, Overseer almost falters there, and I am surprised that Neeb is holding. I thought that he couldn't hold this, especially without making Void Rays, which he has the capacity to do, I believe. So I'm not sure why he hasn't just added a Void Ray, seeing as the queens were kind of overcommitting. He could have even had like 3 Void Rays by now, and that would have secured things for him.
Yeah. I can't believe the third's still alive. Wait, she's sending the queens again.
I like that. That's
Queen
that's
push 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah, and it might just work because one thing that Scarlett did very well was to keep her Ravagers. Ravagers are very fragile units. If they are fighting heads-on against just about anything, they'll fall pretty fast. But if they have buffer, if they have queens, if they have links in front, then they become super powerful. And Scarlett managed to keep most of those for this second wave. So she was anticipating that this was going to be her move. And it's looking pretty good. One of the Immortals is going to falter. Now targeting the second one. Very important to get that surround with the links. A lot of Ravagers are kind of falling. There's only 5 left. So Scarlett has to be very careful. Position them behind the Queens and the Zerglings. One more Ravager will fall, but so will the Immortal as it gets surrounded. And now it's looking pretty good again for the Canadian Queen of Blades.
Yeah, looks like Neeb has been broken. He was trying to reassert that third base. And you know what? Maybe that Nexus 9 would have been better because he tried to build probes and Scarlett was just pressing full throttle on the gas. So she is going to pick up another map, bringing the score 3-2. Cats, this final is delivering, but we were really seeing that dynamic come in big time, right? With the way that it's just either Neeb gets the late game and wins, or Scarlett goes for a really big sharp attack and wins. And it's been back and forth. We've seen Neeb make a defense. We'll see if we go back to the Queen push after this short break, where we will finish off our grand finals here for DreamHack Masters.
We are back with DreamHack Masters full. I'm sorry, Nate. You took
No,
a
it's all
second too
good.
long. I was like, I got you, bro. I love your glasses, by the way. I am Katz, joined by Nate, and we are bringing you the North American Finals, a classic between Neeb and Scarlett.
Hell yeah. I mean, I love that you use that word too, because there's few things that say North American Grand Finals as much as Neeb versus Scarlett, Cats. And it has been exactly as you would expect. Some crazy late game shenanigans, a lot of attacks, a lot of aggression, a lot of timings by both players. But this one, she's been doing everything she can to hang in there and just clawed that last game back very nicely with her double down on that queen walk. In the Southeast, representing Shopify Rebellion, she is Scarlett.
And in the Southwest, it is for Ting, the All-American Protoss, Neeb. Scarlett's out of queen walks, by the way. That, you get 2 free queen walks. It's on Lightshade and it's on Jagannatha, and it's not free wins by any means. I think that Neeb could have done a lot of things differently last game, but that is the first time, by the way, that I throughout this series think, okay, like Neeb could have done a few things differently, and the game would have been completely different. I think in his favor, because Scarlett did make a couple of mistakes there with her queen walk. But there are no more maps like Lightshade and Jagannatha, in the sense that they are so good for queen walks because A, they are relatively short, Lightshade being one of the shortest, Jagannatha medium-sized distance, but they also have a huge gap between the natural and the third base, where the Zerg can kind of decide to go either to one side or the other. This forced Neeb to kind of situate all of his defenses in between, which means no battery overcharge easily available for him, but at least you can have everything on a neutral position. So that was a really cute maneuver from Neeb. And in that last game, I think that Neeb could have actually defended if he made Void Race after he identified that the queens were out of position and engaging the army at the natural base. So I think that he could have held, but I think he's still probably feeling pretty good because, like I said, Nate, Scarlett's out of queen walks.
Do you really ever run out of? No, I think this map has to be one of the hardest ones to do it on, right? Yeah. Scarlett actually did walk queens across this map against Estrella at one point. Yeah, I got to see one of those memes come to fruition in the is it the queen off creep in the slow zone. Unfortunately, we were wondering if that would be like time travel, if going that slow would send you backwards. It does not. You just move really, really slow. But yeah, turns out it's not as exciting or crazy or interesting as we had hoped. And I'm not gonna say that it actually was able to kill either, because that whole game ended up being really weird. This was the map where against Estrella, Scarlett won by 8 carriers not having any interceptors at the end of the game, and there was not a whole lot you could do there. So she was getting really good counterattacks in, utilized the top side of this map very nicely with the Ling attacks, the Roach attacks, and later on the Lurkers coming in around those corners. So I also go back, Cats, to the upper bracket match when Neeb and Scarlett. This is the game. This is the map that I was talking about earlier, with that crazy long game, that absolute the absolute wild one that we could say. And I really have no reason to believe that Neeb wouldn't want to try and make that happen again, because he is too good at it. I think this map is too good for that strategy. I think that if he's able to execute something like that, he's got to be feeling really, really, really strong. So I guess you're just looking for that sort of aggressive play maybe coming out of Scarlett again. But how good is that aggressive play going to be when 4 drones get killed by the first Oracle?
Not great, and I don't really think that Neeb is going to falter to any aggression on this map. Oh no, make it 6, 7, 8! Oh, that's just too painful, I think, for Scarlett here. I mean, this map is a weird one for sure, Nate. I think that it is very difficult for Zerg to defend that gold-based area. The first 3 bases are as normal as they get, but the 4th gets awkward. You're either expanding very close to your opponent and towards that choke. Oh, this could be good for Scarlett, as she's going to get us around onto Adept. So a little bit of a breath of relief, as she was really struggling to stabilize there, or she would have after losing 8 drones. That's a little bit of a win. It forces Neeb to at least warp in a couple of extra units that he didn't want to warp in himself. So should be slowed down himself a little bit. But yeah, it's about the creep spread, Nate, on this side of the map, on the top hand side of the map, to prevent the early game aggression, to make it so that you can actually mine your 4th gold base. And where I'm scared is if Neeb completely bypasses that part of the game, if he completely bypasses trying to break through the susceptible area that is that top right hand side of the map, and then Scarlett commits to trying to secure that area by, say, breaking the rocks, by spreading the creep, and just allocating a lot of her focus on resources to making sure that area is secure, because then she's just going to be behind if Neeb just goes straight into the late game, straight into air.
And I think that you're spot on with that as well, talking about with like the rocks and getting the creep out. Give yourself the space and give yourself the space control. Estrella was hitting her nonstop on this map, constant harass, constant attacks, while he eventually geared up for that late game air transition that you mentioned. And we know that Neeb likes to play that style as well. And if Scarlett can get those counters in, fantastic. If not, I don't think that there's a whole lot of other options, really. She needs to double down on what she's good at, which is hitting these attacks and getting that damage done. Because these late game situations, as weird as it sounds, she's normally very good at it, but Neeb just seems to be straight up better in those mega long games.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, she's very good as long as your name isn't Neeb, and that's about it, right? Like, it's just some players are just exceptionally good at some things, and that's the late game for Neeb. So there's only, again, I can only think of Serral as stacking up to Neeb and being like a clear favorite in that phase of the game in this matchup.
Yeah, these Lings coming out looking for anything by that third. See the Adepts, turn around. And we do have some vision on where the Oracles are. Scarlett's going to spread those Zerglings as that gold base gets situated. Get a lot of extra money going over here. But Neeb's adding a lot of gateways as these Immortals are coming out, Cats, with the Templar Archives. So I'm mostly just waiting to see if he starts +1 air, because that was the first thing he did before he added the extra gateways in the previous games. Or if this is, I think you're going to attack me with roaches or something, so I'm just going to build Immortal Charge Lot Archon and just roll over it sort of deal.
Yeah, and this is what I was talking about as well. Scarlett already forced to make a lot of units just to make sure that she can secure that top right-hand side of the map. She's already breaking those rocks, but that is an investment in itself to the units that are breaking those rocks. And luckily, I want to say for her, Neeb didn't bypass this part of the game. He has been making a lot of units himself, and so those units would come in handy if Neeb went on the aggressive. Whereas I think if Neeb had just gone straight into the Stargates, it would have been very, very difficult for Scarlett to keep up while gimping herself basically by making these early investments into not economy. She now has a healthy economy of 83 drones as well. So the Queen of Blades is fairly stable.
And she's going to be bringing a lot of that army that you were talking about. We have a huge number of Ravagers in the northwest. They can't shoot the Void Ray, but they can also kill this hat. They should be able to knock down the Nexus and run away before the Void Ray could kill all of these units, right? That's still a lot of damage that you have to do. The army is coming up, though, for Neeb. You get a little bit worried because, as you were saying in that last game, the Ravagers themselves are actually pretty squishy. A lot of damage is going on to this, and that Nexus is still up. That fourth base is going to finish for Neeb. So Scarlett comes up, and she's going to drop several of her Ravagers. At least 3 of them get killed before that before she's even able to do anything to that fourth, and she didn't get anything done to that fourth. So certainly not the scenario that she would have been hopeful for with that move out. And she's going to go into Mutalisk. Starts +1 air, starts Baneling speed, starts melee. Cat,
I actually love that move.
You love it? Tell me
love
why.
it. I think that she's identified that Neeb isn't really the type of player that will be going blindly into Phoenix, for example. This map has a very short distance by air. And if she can attack the top and the army composition that Neeb has also shown barely has any... look at that. It's Archons. They're awesome against Muta if they're clumped up and like bunched up on top of them, but that's not going to be the case. You can just mostly avoid them. There's no stalkers whatsoever. So I think this Muta could be very deadly. Could do a lot of economic damage. Scarlett's gonna go straight into the probe lines here. Gonna find a Warp Prism for free as well. That's a nice pickup that she doesn't have to worry about as well. Now Neeb sees this. He thinks, oh my god, well, I have to make something happen right now. This might turn into a base trade because the ground army of Scarlett does not want to engage into that army of Neeb. And Neeb cannot contest the Mutas of Scarlett right now. So it is going to be a base trade starting here.
Oh my God.
Both players are good enough to know not to fight each other on certain grounds. I absolutely love this. Beautiful corrosive vials. with Scarlett trying to surround as well with the links to make sure that the units can't move, and it's a matter of who kills who first. I mean, I like the position for Scarlett. The links are excellent. If they're uncontested, they have very low HP, but very high damage output. Similar situation for the Zealots. The spellcasters here may not be able to do too much, but I would love if Scarlett came back with her Muta at some point to try and pick off on those Templars, and then look to engage, maybe with a Roach Force onto that army. I like this for Scarlett a little bit better, but it's close.
Yeah, it's a very tense situation to be in. She does have drones that got out. She has that north center base, so she's been able to hold on to that. And as far as a race to just kill the other base goes, the main base infrastructure is still exposed. A lot of the tech is going to have to be rebuilt. I think killing this layer is definitely important. And, well, okay, if Neeb didn't know about the top center base, he knows now. So
That's only like 2 probes get recalled, and they're gonna get a recall to their death as well. I mean, Scarlett is definitely taking the better trades here. Neeb is making 1 Phoenix. The Spire is already being remade by Scarlett, identifying that if she continues to make Muta, she's gonna have an unstoppable force. And Neeb doesn't really have anything but a Phoenix, a couple of Archons, and some Storm to deal with this Muta. So at this point, you don't even dive with the Muta on top of this army to try and clear the Templar to make way for things like Roach Ravager to clear the rest of the army. I think you just outright say, I have enough Muta that I can beat your army with only Muta. And I think that's what she's going for here. So already reproducing those Muta, she's not committing to anything else on the ground. She has to be careful not to get trapped. It is a big brain play. This has been a big brain game. I love it. And yeah, I think Scarlett might be equalizing, Nate. This is so exciting.
Yeah, she just got 1 hatchery, but a Spire done next to it. So as long as she can continue to build those Mutalisks up, and the Phoenix doesn't have upgrades, it doesn't have range, so it's not going to be any sort of threat to these Mutalisks. And I think you're right, Cats. What Scarlett just wants to do is be able to get enough of these that she can swarm out this army. However, you know, if those Archons are able to land a couple more hits without the Ravagers getting involved, that is definitely a big problem that needs to be dealt with.
Scarlett looks like she wants to engage. Every second that goes by is a second in favor of Scarlett right now. I think that she doesn't need to engage, but she is looking at a very strong position down that ramp where she feels confident enough that she might be able to make it happen. Storm's landing onto Muta, but they're gonna regenerate faster than the energy on the Templars is gonna come back, because that is the ability of the Muta. And I think that Scarlett just needs to go into Neeb's main right now if she wants to force the issue, or continue to expand away and maybe add a lot of Spine Crawlers in her top right-hand side base. If she does that, I think she's secured this game. Neeb has no economy. Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, Neeb does have a couple of Archons with an overcharged battery here, but the Mutas have spread out. They are not going to be neutralized by those. And he was running back towards his base, but changes his mind. The rest of it's going to head towards that top center position as Scarlett has the rest of her army moving around the bottom side of the map. Drones are on the evac. Another hatchery was completed, and she is also building one in that bottom center right position. I think the hardest part here is there's no way that Neeb's going to be able to kill all of Scarlett's buildings before she kills all of his, even if the armies don't fight, right? It's just not fast enough. The army itself, it's not made of charge lots. The charge lots all died to the Mutas, so I don't know how you're going to beat the Mutalisks in a race.
You don't, Nate. I think this is looking great for Scarlett. She has taken the option to not fight the army of Neeb. I like that, and Neeb will GG. He knows it as well. And we are all tied up, baby.
Aye. Game 7, baby. How about that? Well, we wanted to see something a little bit interesting. We wanted to see something a little bit different. Ladies and gentlemen, we're getting it. We finally get to see a nice little move. You know, when we talk about Scarlett, things that she's known for over the years, her Mutalisk play, her Mutalisk control is something that always gets brought up, but you know, it's not something that we always get to see. If Neeb had committed to the Stargates earlier, like we were talking about, if he had a fleet beacon, it would have been a whole lot easier to get, you know, Anion Pulse Crystals, maybe would have already had +1, could build 2-3 Phoenix at a time. But by committing to that ground army, he was like, I don't want to be overwhelmed by a ground push again. And Scarlett says, great, because I have an air army for you this time. And perfectly calculated. It's just really impressive to see it work that smoothly.
It was a beautiful maneuver, right? She shows the Ravager Ling. It looks like a horrible trade, or at least not something that was going to work on the top left-hand side of the map. Ravagers are very expensive gas-wise. They actually are the same cost of a Muta. Each Ravager costs the same as a Muta. So it's very difficult for a Protoss to gauge just how much investment there is into those Ravagers, because you assume that the Zerg is also taking in different paths, getting more upgrades, going to, Infestation Pit, Hive, etc. That wasn't the case. Scarlett hadn't shown Muta all series long. Neeb hadn't shown Phoenix all series long. This is the perfect map for Muta. Scarlett sees the composition of Neeb, thinks, okay, you don't have a single Stalker, you have one Void Ray, I'm gonna make Muta. Neeb sees that, and the big brain player that he is, he just pushes on his own gas pedal, says, I can't contend with that army, goes for a base trade, hopes that Scarlett engages, but it doesn't happen because she's too smart for that. And yeah, I mean, that was awesome.
Yeah, super well done. A classic. It's just such a classic Scarlett way to win a game, where it seems like the odds are a little bit stacked against you, right? With that strategy, especially on that map. But one of my favorite things that we get to do sometimes in StarCraft, Cats, is we have a map that everybody really hates and tries to avoid speedos forever. And then eventually you get forced in a grand final. It goes all the way to the end of the map. You push it all the way. You kick the can down the road as far as you possibly can. But Cats, the road has an end. And it is at Beckett Industries where we are going to play out the final game of the North American DreamHack Summer Grand Finals. And this is going to be an interesting one. Let's see what they break out. One that you won't see a whole lot played competitively, but we got to see it twice today. What a miracle of life, Paolo. In the bottom left, we have the blue Zerg player representing Shopify Rebellion. She is Scarlett.
With the 12th, I was wondering if this was going to happen. It's the perfect map for it. I love Scarlett. Yeah. And in the top right-hand side of the map, it is for Ting. Neeb. This map is crazy, and thus it is my favorite map in the map pool. I am so happy to see it in the final game of the finals of this North American Classic. Scarlett is... Oh, that is so wonderful. She's also tricking Neeb. She doesn't look at her minerals. She does not have the money for that hatchery. She's just showing the drone. Yeah, she wants him to think, I am taking a third. Now Neeb's gonna scout and is gonna see the 12 pool much later than he wanted to see it. So he's gonna have to rush a probe down to his natural base right away, and he's gonna have to make a wall-off happen in a short period of time. But this is gonna be a difficult hold. Again, this map considerably shorter than other maps, like a 2 or 3 seconds shorter, and that can be a long time when it comes to those very early attacks. So we'll see if Neeb is able to hold.
Yeah, it's definitely he's got the information now, but is it a little bit too late? Let's see what ends up happening, how he deals with this. That extra gateways coming in, the cybernetics core boots up. You're not getting a quick nexus and being able to defend a build like this. You just kind of have to take the L for a little bit. Scarlett is still just on her one. Wait,
Neeb thinks he's playing Dota, man.
It's everything. It's everything. The drones. Choo, baby. Here we go. Did anybody order lobster?
Oh, baby. Nate, this is going to be nifty. Neeb already with a probe in position, though, to block this from happening, and it's actually going to work. And now Scarlett in a lot of trouble as the drones are not going to do anything.
Just the one zealot. He's fighting. He's Vegeta up in there. Hold the door. Hold the door! Cats, you're done with this.
Can he hold the door, though? I mean, the other zealot is trapped on the other side of the map. The drones are trying to stack up to try and do damage all at once, and it's actually working. Beautiful moves here from Scarlett, but they're actually going to dislodge her own Zerglings from doing enough damage. This will fall, but not before Neeb can start re-walling this off. This is an awesome.
How often do we get to see this? Oh boy, here we go. The drones do get through. They're in fisticuffs with the probes, getting those tasers and lasers, but the shield battery's done, Cats. And the Zealot and Adept are gonna munch and crunch their way through this fiesta. Get the check. It's time to go. GG. Neeb is the North American Grand Final champion once again.